On Locked Up and Locked Out, we shine a light on stories of incarceration, injustice, and the courageous fight for redemption. In this episode, we sit down with attorney Andy O'Shea, training director for Connecticut's Office of the Public Defender.
I don't feel so distinguished, but that's kind of you to say. I'm Andy O'Shea. I'm the training director over with the training director for the Public Defenders.
Andy has trained countless public defenders, fought for systemic reform, and helped exonerate the wrongfully convicted, including Shawn Henning, who was freed after nearly 30 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
For example, Ricky Birch, I represented him. Yeah. And we did a trial, it was like over a month long, and I think we absolutely demonstrated that he was completely innocent.
Right.
Him and his co-defendant, Shawn Henning, and they were both amazing people. And it was devastating when we got a decision from the habeas court that denied our petition. We had all these many different grounds. And the decision, there were things in there that, for example, claimed that we never presented witnesses that were critical to the case.
Right.
And I agree. Had we not presented those witnesses, it would have been problematic. The issue is we did present those witnesses, and yet we have a decision claiming that we didn't.
This is more than law. It's humanity. It's about fighting for truth when the system fails. Join us for an eye-opening conversation on justice, hope, and the power of legal advocacy.
Good morning. Thank you for joining Locked Up and Locked Out podcast, the first season, the first episode. And I have a distinguished guest from the Public Defender's Office. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I don't feel so distinguished, but it's kind of you to say. I'm Andy O'Shea. I'm the training director over with the training director for the Public Defenders.
I have the pleasure to work with.
My pleasure.
Yes. So, in your individual capacity, how does it feel working in helping people regain their life?
Wow. There's a lot of feelings in that type of situation. So, and there's a lot of ways that I get to be involved in helping with that. But I did want to take a second to say, I am speaking as an individual, not as an agent of the division. And so in the situation where sort of exonerating an individual, for example, someone who's been wrongfully convicted, in that type of situation of regaining a life, the feelings are mixed. I mean, immense happiness and joy, right, to see a wrong righted after so long, but also still deep sorrow of recognizing the amount of the loss that can never be restored, and then honestly, just deep gratitude is the most other overwhelming emotion to be able to be part of the story like that, to be part of seeing justice, and is amazing. And you know, when that happens, I'm just one small part, right? These are systems. Obviously, the judges are the ones who decided to grant that relief. Right? They get all that credit, and there's a whole team around that's been working for years that leads to an exoneration of individuals, more than just the attorney. And for example, in the Public Defender's Office, we're really fortunate that we're extraordinarily well resourced. So we do have these whole teams that are working together: investigators, social workers, administrative assistants, and together we're all fighting to help our clients.
So, to your point, how do you feel, or how do you filter the information back to their loved ones and things of that nature? What does that look like?
That's a tricky situation for us as attorneys because there's ethical issues that get involved with that. Our goal is to protect the client no matter the top. That's the top thing, and so we're going to follow their instructions. So it's a mix. So when I have my client's blessing to communicate, and I'm not also there's DOC rules that we can't be causing communication that shouldn't be happening. But otherwise, that's really helpful to be able to dialogue with a client's family and give them information. But it's only when the client wants it. And so it's a tough thing sometimes when I have a spouse or I have someone else calling and saying, hey, what's going on with the case? And I have to say, I'm so sorry, but I don't actually get that. So then I go reach out to the client and ask, can I speak with this person? It can cause some delay instead of frustrating.
So if you say you have a client that's majority of your clients are incarcerated, what do you do for the client that feel as though they're not being heard? Nobody's listening to what happened to me during this case. What avenues do they have to circumvent that? If they feel as though their questions or their concerns are going unanswered.
So I would just want to. That's a really good question. Long answer.
Right.
So in my role as the training director, I actually don't have any clients anymore at this point.
Right.
So I'll talk about what I teach the attorneys to do.
Right.
And I'll say the public defenders here, I am so lucky to work with. They have so many amazing, and we do this because we care. I went to law school to become a public defender. That was my goal. I'm so thrilled to get to be part of that team. And so but one huge part of what we do is to show that care to our client, help them navigate. And we care regardless of whether or not the state can meet its high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If it looks like a punishment is going to happen, we're there to try to make sure it's appropriate and warranted and not imbalanced, which often we see happen. And so we're the ones that we step in between the state and the client to try to help the system, this broken system, it's still admirable in many, many ways, so many ways, recognize the humanity and the dignity of our client. And so if we have, I get in this system, that's easy, you're given, for example, a number, an inmate number, and you start to become part of a machine rather than recognizing your individuality. And that's what the system is doing. And not necessarily intentionally, but that's what's happening. So then if there are struggles there, then I would hope that the attorney would then talk to the client. And one of the things we do spend time training on that you've helped with, client's perspective. And then obviously our job is still to counsel them, to provide sage advice, right? But ultimately, it's the client's life, not ours. Right. And so and so hopefully that would be able to resolve. Because ultimately, oftentimes I've seen clients try to speak in court about things that they care passionately about. Yes. And I understand they are important things, but I've also seen that happen, and then they say things that they don't recognize actually deeply. And so it actually really hurts them sometimes, and that can be really painful for us as attorneys to watch sometimes. But I think that hopefully if we can establish a rapport, I'm rambling on.
No.
The biggest struggle we have as public defenders, the biggest struggle I've had as a site counsel and public defenders, building trust with clients, rapport, right? We're thrust upon them, right? So when we're appointed, the client didn't get to pick us, they didn't get to choose. Right. They don't know me, right? And I get that. They don't know that
because trust is earned.
Oh, it is earned. Yeah. And so it can be. It's a real struggle, and so it's something that's important for us as attorneys to focus on, putting in the effort and the time, and I think we do work on that, and something in training that you've helped with to try to help us be better at that.
So, my 2 years and 4 months and some change of being home, because I've been formerly incarcerated, I'd served 30 years, and to be on that side of the fence, so to speak, I wasn't heard. So like the training and work that I do with y'all is special because I get the opportunity to talk to a slew of lawyers that touch to understand it's a delicate tightrope which y'all walk. We're dealing with people that's there that should, have somebody that's going to walk them through, give them the understanding of the seriousness of the crime, but also listen and be willing to be schooled, so to speak. We too often in a society get caught up in titles. There shouldn't be no small U's or no big U's when it comes to teamwork. And that's what it takes, I believe, in regaining somebody's life. I have to duplicitly trust that what I'm saying to you is not going to fall on deaf ears, or you're just going to write something down and during the course of going to trial, forget what our strategy was and just go totally to what your strategy. So it's a fine gateway that we mash and we come, to a even kill to understand that you need me, I need you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because I have so appreciated my clients that have worked with me on cases and that type of thing, because it's been really valuable and really helpful. Right, we may disagree,
Right.
But that's fine. Let's talk about it, because there's so many insights that my clients have given me that were great ideas, great thoughts about where to look, what to do, arguments to make. And I always just love it and appreciate when they're interested in engaging that way. But I also understand the ones that are traumatized by the system, or they're not. I haven't earned that respect. I haven't earned that trust yet to engage in that way. So that's not a problem either.
And I think it's appreciated when you're honest. Just to just sometimes listen, I can't do that. That's not going to be a possibility. But I can do this, or your advice is taken. I understand where you're coming from, and I'm gonna look into that. And not knowing is all right. Instead of acting as if you have all the solutions or the answers. What I want to get to a point to what was it like when you was in private practice? I believe you was in private practice.
Yeah.
How did it feel helping people regain their life in that capacity?
Sure. So so after I graduated law school, I clerked for a year at the Supreme Court, Connecticut Supreme Court, and then I was lucky enough to work for Kirschbaum Law Group, the private practice. And I was lucky there to work with some amazing attorneys.
Right.
And we were assigned counsel. So most of my work, I practiced in a lot of different practice areas representing what I was interested in was assigned counsel work. So in that, I know you know this, but just for your listeners, there are a number of attorneys that have contracts with the state. They're not full-time public defenders, and they're private attorneys, and they take contracts and they represent indigent criminal defendants. And so I was
not to cut you off. What do indigent mean for people?
Sorry,
For the average person that don't know.
Thank you. I slip into legal jargon all the time. So there's these guidelines as far as how much income that if you make below that, then you qualify as indigent, and then you get an appointed attorney.
Okay.
If you're facing a case that's facing jail time, essentially, and everything's complicated. So there's nuances there, but and so I went to law school to become a public defender. That's why I went to it, and then and worked with some amazing folks who did really good work, and I learned a lot. And so there, I handled, in addition to the different types of private cases and probate and criminal defense, and other areas to administrative law. But I did a number. I primarily did post-conviction work. So I primarily did direct appeals, and then also habeas petitions when someone is trying to. They've been previously convicted and they're alleging that there was something that went wrong with that conviction, and there's another trial. And I know you know all this, but I'm still just saying it. And then but I also represented folks in our GA and JD courts. So.
Now, what is GA and JD?
Thank you. Yeah. Read my mind. So in Connecticut, we have a sort of a 2-tier structure for our criminal system. When a case comes in, it comes into the GA court, geographical area. And those are organized under judicial districts. We have a number of judicial districts, and each judicial district can have some number of GAs within it. And they're broken up geographically, and they cover different towns. And someone's accused of a crime, it starts at a GA where they're arraigned, and then it could move up to a JD. And so I handled cases in both those courts across. I think I had my court bingo, and I had almost every court in the state. There's only one or two that I was able to get to and practice in. But I did complete my DOC bingo chart.
Okay.
Having courts in every facility.
Need that.
But your question was how did I feel about handling? Well, there's kind of two ways I want to answer that. So when I first started there, I was handling cases on my own, and I was so lucky to be able to get involved with a couple of innocence cases, as well as a number of other really compelling habeas cases, because there's so much forms of injustice in our system. It's not just the wrongfully convicted, it's the overpunished. It's where the state couldn't meet its burden, even if we can't say that they were actually innocent, right? And so we should, as you pointed out earlier, when you were saying, I love what you were saying, we don't know a lot of things, and we shouldn't just be pretending we do. And so I teach the attorneys, I don't know is the most common answer you should be given to questions. And that's fine. How do you find it? In the same way, in the criminal system, sometimes we just don't know what happened. And we need to learn to accept that and not just look to punish someone and accept it. Sometimes, and I know that's a problem too.
Everything's not black and white.
But that's tough for people. Like psychologically, it's difficult. In particular, I can imagine for a victim that'd be extraordinarily difficult. But anyway, so we would advocate in all these different areas, and I was fortunate enough to handle a couple of cases that led to convictions being undone, for a long time serving incarcerated, whether that be for what I would say innocence grounds or for other procedural grounds where there's a fundamental unfairness. For example, the state using false evidence to convict somebody. And so that felt, being involved in that way, that's sort of this immense sense of privilege of just being able to be involved in these stories and have the ability to get to work with my client, get to know them, and work alongside a team. Phenomenal. But the other experience I had there was that I got to train and mentor a number of attorneys. I ended up shifting into that type of role for the firm, which I was so thrilled to be able to do. And we created this training program together with Damon Kirschbaum, the head of the firm. And in there, I had the experience. So I had 2 attorneys, and we had some unbelievably talented attorneys that we hired and worked with and trained. And 2 of them won their very first habeas case. And for attorneys who practice in this area, it might be a little shocking to hear, because you could go your whole career without ever winning one, because it's so hard to win a habeas. And I just the other emotions there are just pride and joy in them and celebrating, and being able to have worked with them and created supports and create a system that's working. My goal was, how can we, I can only impact so many people if I'm directly representing them, but is there a way that I can provide guidance and have more of an impact to the full 200 instead of 20 people, and and I got to see some of that happen, and that was phenomenal.
So to your point, another question, do you feel as though it's a great idea to have all the habeases in one place, going to Rockville?
That's a good question. There's pros and cons.
I'm against it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. Why are you against it?
My thing is, you have judges who come complacent in the sense of believing this is just the run of the mill. We can get rid of this habeas, and it's like sending it to the graveyard, so to speak, when it goes to Rockville, because the notion is once you go to Rockville, no matter how strong the evidence is, the judges don't want to do the right thing, and I mean, from my experience, is hasn't been pleasant. In the cases that I've read or seen that should have been turned over weren't turned over. And we can get into, a whole bunch of reasons why it shouldn't have been turned, or why it shouldn't have been turned over. But you get cases that end up being turned over for prosecutorial misconduct, and it was just before this judge. So what's the problem? How do we circumvent that type of issue?
Well, that's a good question. There's cultural issues there, but I do want to. There's another side though, as far as why we do everything in Wrongful, and I think in some ways that's very advantageous, but it's a mix. There's pros and cons, and so the pros for that are it's one location that can develop an expertise in this law, because habeas law is complicated. You have to know all of criminal law, and then you have to know all of habeas law on top of that.
Yes.
Which is, there's a lot of procedural nuances that are not necessarily intuitive, and they can get folks in trouble.
Yeah,
please.
So it's a different type of skill set I'm hearing.
Right, and if we can, sorry.
From a regular attorney.
Well, from a criminal defense, like at the trial level, yeah.
Right, okay.
It's sort of, you need to know all of that, and then you need to know
extra, right,
yeah.
Okay.
And it's different in that these cases are in front of a judge, and that's a different skill. You're sort of doing, you might do things differently when it's in front of a judge or a jury. So the advantage is that we get to have a place where a court that develops an expertise and a knowledge in this particular area. And instead of, if you were to do this in each individual jurisdiction, each judge, when they get a habeas, would then have to take a long time to try to learn and figure that out, because, not every judge coming in, probably a minority of judges coming in to become judges have practiced in habeas or know it well. And so, that's was the idea, I think, behind this. Let's help develop judges that become familiar with this law. And I've seen that work well. I've seen judges develop in their understanding of habeas over time, and we've also seen, as much as I've seen exactly what you pointed out, I've seen some bad decisions. I'm happy to talk about.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But I've also seen some really amazing. We've really had some fantastic judges that I'm deeply appreciative of that have come through there.
Right.
And I will say, I've also seen the flip side. I've litigated habeas outside of Rockville by transferring to other courts, and I lost.
Right.
And I've encountered struggles with, the judge was not as familiar with the law, which is very complicated and different.
Right. Excuse me.
And so, and maybe I'm wrong, because I'm wrong regularly, right, about things, but I just disagreed with the ultimate result and the reasoning. But I would have seen a similar result sometimes in Rockville as well. So it's a struggle, because it really depends on the judge, and hopefully we're helping equip the judges by keeping things in this idea of, like, coming to Rockville, they can develop their expertise.
Because in my experience, or my understanding, the system in its whole are a majority of minorities that's going through the habeas system, or the system in its whole. And the cases that I've seen that may get overturned may have legs to a professional eye, but then you have these cases that is just downright nasty, and it should have been overturned without a shadow of a doubt. But due to whatever the powers that be, it doesn't. And then you have the person that's stuck with that, going back to that prison, having to deal with being wrong yet again, and being on these type of cases. What is your sense of feeling going through that with your client, and like the emotional aspect of it?
So, wow, yeah. I have a sign in my office behind me, and it says, "Perplexed yet not despairing."
Right.
It's a quote from 2 Corinthians. My faith is what drove me to do this work, and it's really important to me. And that's from a letter from Paul to the Corinthians, just trying to describe the church. And I think that phrase captures what the feeling that I've had for so long dealing with this broken system. You know, I grew up in middle class, worked on a farm, very privileged. Yeah, but like sheltered from the brokenness of our criminal legal system, and privileged in that way to not have to experience that. And then when I came in and encountered that through a friend of mine from church, was a public defender, and I was looking at other careers. And my family hates lawyers.
Right.
I never thought I'd ever be a lawyer. But I was like, oh, let me check that out. And I was like, this is amazing. And then I started to encounter as much as I deeply admire.
So you was able to stick it to the family as well.
My family's amazing. I'm so fortunate, and they've been incredibly supportive.
Right.
And but they did, it comes from some bad experiences they had with attorneys, because we're all deeply flawed human beings, including attorneys, and so but the legal system that's so admirable in so many ways, and one of the reasons, it recognizes it's flawed, and which is great because it's a human institution. Humans are flawed, therefore we've created this thing, it's going to be flawed. And it recognizes it and builds in escape routes like the entire habeas system, escape valves, which I love that about it, right? There's so many amazing, we're struggling to find what is fair and right and true, and that's so important. But it makes mistakes. And so when I encountered that, I was shocked, right? First off, because I had just assumed that things were more fair than they were. And I was sort of blown away when I started encountering injustice and bad decisions. But as far go ahead, keep going. As far as processing with my clients, so I remember, for example, Ricky Birch. I represented him. And we did a trial, it was like over a month long, and I think we absolutely demonstrated that he was completely innocent. Him and his co-defendant, Shawn Henning, and they were both amazing people. And it was devastating when we got a decision from the habeas court that denied our petition. We had all these many different grounds, and the decision, there were things in there that, for example, claimed that we never presented witnesses that were critical to the case. And I agree. Had we not presented those witnesses, it would have been problematic. The issue is we did present those witnesses, and yet we have a decision claiming that we didn't.
So how do you rectify a situation where is built on false fallacies?
First, a bottle of wine. But like that processing that takes a while, and like it, just anger and rage and frustration and despair, right? And like it all comes through, and then obviously, with the client too, processing it's their life, it's not mine. I'm just watching this happen, right? I can't even imagine what it would feel like for them,
right?
And so, but then we get to work, right? And that's what we do as public defenders, is when we see something that we're trying to stop this type of situation from even happening, is in this case, we think about what are our procedural avenues, because the law recognizes things are wrong. So how can we fix when that happens? And so in this case, we have the ability to appeal. And so we went up to the appellate court and ultimately ended up at the Supreme Court. And thankfully, they reversed the habeas court.
Now, how much time does that take?
Yeah, that's one of the systemic injustices that can occur in this type of situation. That took a couple of years. And because you need to, I understand, right? We need time to make our arguments, and then the state needs time to review them, form their own opinion, and then they usually are going to oppose it. And then the court needs time to look at everything and figure out what the right decision is. And so that takes a while. And it's, obviously that just prolongs the injustice when that occurs.
So, in the Black community, the Hispanic community, we believe there's two different laws. A law for us and a law for the rest of the community on and abroad. How do we turn the corner and put our faith back in the system, or structure the system to work for us?
Yeah, it's tough for anyone when
Right.
you're really dealing with a broken system.
Right.
To figure out how much trust and faith you put in it. And I will say the good news is that if we look at the statistics, I do think that the majority of the time things are getting done right. Now, it doesn't mean it's being done optimally.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's not
Right.
taking too long or causing other
Right.
issues along the way. There's so many things that we can do to improve the system.
Because myself, I definitely believe we're turning a corner, but we need to turn the corner faster and have more accountability. We need more laws geared to help and punish those, you know what I'm saying, that break the law when it's broken. We need more access to funding to help people that's been wrongly convicted coming out more quicker. These are things that's near and dear to my heart. Being a person that's formerly incarcerated, that been there, a part of that broken system. But what restores my faith is sitting beside people like you that know the quality of work and the honest, you know what I'm saying, is that you try to come with, that you do come with, frankly, each and every day. Being able to pick up the phone and tell you, I got a person that I know that's been wrong. How can I help get this man where he needs to be? And these are honestly, you know what I'm saying, the conversations that truly need to be had.
And that's why I love being a public defender,
right.
Because I'm surrounded by other people
Right.
who are also passionate about the system and our clients, and they're amazing attorneys,
Right.
so smart and thoughtful, and there's so many new ones coming in now that I get the privilege to work with, that I'm like, oh my gosh,
And I
they're
see
so great, yeah.
And I see it.
And so and one thing though, we're so lucky in Connecticut. I'm so thankful to the state that they support the public defenders as much as we
Right.
do here, and we are very well. Not only are we in the trenches every day, right? We know the players, we know the system. We also have funds to be able to hire experts when we need
Right.
them, right? And
Right.
also the
Right.
team I mentioned. We work directly with social workers,
Right.
investigators,
Right.
administrators,
Right.
who are amazing people. We have all this technological supports for case management, and so it's not to say there aren't problems with different
Right.
things,
Well, anything is a
but when you
problem.
look, nationally, comparatively, and I know I'm biased,
Right.
but I really do think that we have the best public defender system in the nation, and there are many other phenomenal
Right,
public
right.
defenders. There's a lot of ones right
Right,
here
right,
that are
right.
so good, but I think one of the reasons that one of the many reasons that sets us apart is that. It makes us so exceptional is how I'm so appreciative to the governor and the legislature for keeping a priority to make sure that we have a healthy public defender system that can make sure that we are this check against the excesses of the executive branch,
Right.
which again, everyone makes mistakes, right? And so it's such a privilege to be able to be part of that and to try to improve things, right? And
Right,
have that goal. And even if we're not pushing for systemic change,
Right.
just for each individual client who hopefully doesn't need systemic change to be, because that takes longer
Absolutely.
to help them and navigate their own situation, and we can provide all sorts of supports. The other thing that's nice about it is we represent folks in so many different capacities.
Right.
So we're able to help in all different areas of life with all different legal problems, a lot more than what the traditional folk thing you think of when someone's being accused of a crime. So we also represent folks on appeal, post-conviction. We have an innocence project, which you know all of this, but
Right.
we do habeas as well, which is just generally contesting the unreliable of a prior conviction in that particular area of habeas that we handle. Then we also do delinquency defense, for children
Okay.
accused
Okay.
of delinquency. We do child protection matters with individuals whose children are trying to be taken away from them. We assist folks in family support magistrate proceedings where they're facing contempt because of an allegation they're not adequately paying child support. And we represent folks in parole revocation. We represent folks in psychiatric defense. So when they are committed to the PSRB because they're found with mental disease or defect,
Right.
and we stay with them and we continue to advocate for them through that whole
I
system.
did not know that.
No, it's just a wonderful division to be able to be part of.
Wow.
So yeah.
So, any given day, a person that doesn't know would be able to contact the public defender's office and ask them these array of questions and things of that nature.
Well, as far as just general informational things, I'm not sure who the right person to call would be. You
Right.
can always give me a call.
Right.
And I've configured, if I can't answer, I can figure out someone
Right.
who can. But otherwise, the field office is really the ones that handle for each of their communities.
Okay.
How to
So
assist.
contact the town that you're in.
Right.
to get that information.
And if you're not able to get through there, and they're very busy focusing on their
Right.
clients, and
Right,
that
right.
definitely should be first.
Right.
And so if they're not able to get to it, then someone more in the
Okay.
central office might be able to help.
All right.
Get the information, but ultimately, it kind of depends on what the question is
Right,
being
right,
asked as far as where
right.
to ask specifically. But I can always help anyone find any information.
Because that's important. I didn't know that y'all handle psychiatric issues and child issues and things of that nature. So the more important issues to the community abroad, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing because it does allow us to then provide sort of more of a wraparound service if a client has multiple legal issues in their life that we're able to handle. I mean, there's limits statutorily what we can do. But when we're able to partner together and work in that way,
That's
it's
great.
a beautiful thing.
That's great. Now, do y'all have a great working with the prosecutors in these cases now, or has it improved as far as being able to go in and say, let's talk about this case. It bothers me. And what has been like the feedback in that aspect?
It's mixed, right?
Right.
And I'm so appreciative to prosecutors and police officers. These are very difficult jobs
Right.
to do, and they're also important jobs, even though my job is generally to be a check on and
Right.
to make sure that they're doing their
We're
job
checking balance,
correctly,
right.
right? Like is this legal? Was
Right.
it done properly,
Right.
right? So it depends, right? We're all human, and we all have,
Right.
and so in the same way, there's a wide range of what you might see from defense attorneys.
Right.
There's a range of what you might see
Right.
prosecutors. But for example, yesterday, I was so lucky I was speaking in New Haven, and we had a meeting with the public defender's office,
Okay.
the prosecutor's office, and one of the judges there,
Right.
and we were talking through this, what I find to be a very fascinating legal issue,
Right.
just to have a dialogue
Right.
together about what do we
Right.
think about this,
Right.
and how do we want to handle this. And so I'm so appreciative of that because, particularly, we may disagree. I found that I have a different worldview than many of the prosecutors that I work with, but I very much respect them. I completely understand where they come from.
Right.
And we can disagree reasonably, and we can work through a case together, right? And make our arguments, and we don't make the decision. The jury or the judge does, right? So
I have to say myself, for the last 2 and 4 months of being home, that my belief that they're all bad actors has definitely changed, because you have good actors and you have some bad actors. When I've run across these police that's good, prosecutors that's good, to say that was wrong, and I can admit it on my my behalf, is special, because like I said, when I first came home, you don't get that. I'm sorry. You represent a body of people, and everybody doesn't come to the table with the same skill set, mentally or physically. But you are the balance and check for the ones that's lacking, and people like you.
Maybe.
I mean, to be honest, because if I don't have a person that's sympathetic like you, where do I turn to? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's to be commended. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's not just me. I'm a
No,
product of my circumstances.
the vast
Good. Yeah,
right community.
Yeah,
right.
We have.
Right.
We're so lucky to have the amazing attorneys working together.
Because I've seen some good people that I worked with. I had the pleasure to work with through the training and things of that nature. So I definitely see, or I'm privy to see something different from what my preconceived notion was.
Yeah, it's so easy to focus on the negative, right? When folks do make mistakes in whatever capacity they're in, and it leads to serious injustice. I mean, I've handled cases like that, but I think, like you're pointing out, it's there are a lot of really good people that are in this system in all the different parts of the system.
And it's a lot of bad ones.
Well, I don't know if I'd say a lot.
It's enough.
And then I'm a defense attorney.
Right.
So I struggle to call anyone bad.
Right.
So I want to see, the positive, and that's what I want to focus on. We're more than the worst thing that we've ever done.
Right.
And that doesn't matter whether it's like a prosecutor that's been hiding evidence, or a police officer that's fabricating evidence, or one of my clients who's done something else.
Absolutely.
Right? So
absolutely.
Everyone, we're all human.
Absolutely.
We need to recognize that. And we need to address when there's, obviously if there is conduct that's happening, it needs to be stopped.
Absolutely.
It needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
But
that makes the good ones the good ones.
Right. And there's a way we can do that with dignity and respect.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I'm just appreciative for the fantastic folks that we get to work with, because there are so many really good prosecutors that I just thank you for. Sometimes like I said, we may disagree on what is reasonable, what is a proper punishment here, that type of thing.
Right.
But like ultimately, they genuinely, and I think all of them are genuine. Prosecutors, they're doing a really hard job, and their job is to do justice, right? But that can be tough. What my definition of justice might be different, and so that's why we have this adversarial system that takes more than one person to decide what's fair here, and so we put it together.
Yes, I believe we must also call an ace a ace, a spade a spade. When we, like you said, when we see wrong, we have to speak against it and rebuke it by any and all means necessary, because it taints the whole system. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I have no problem speaking truth to power. Right?
Right.
That's my job. Yeah. But I'm going to do it in a respectful
Absolutely.
way. And,
Absolutely.
And I mean, I had a case, for example, where the state was literally arguing, and this still boggles me. It went up to the Supreme Court. The argument was treated so seriously, and they won at the appellate court. They were arguing that it's okay for the state to manufacture false evidence as long as the defense knows about it, as long as the defense knows that they're doing that. And my naive coming in from not being privileged and not interacting with the criminal justice system, and in the brokenness, and that just blew me away. I was just like, why would we ever tolerate a system where the state would be allowed to fabricate evidence, allow lies on the stand that they know are false, regardless of whether the defense knows about it. But anyway, so I get to have the good fortune. I mean, how lucky am I that I get to be the person that gets to advocate against that? Yeah. And so and my colleagues, and we all work together every day fighting against things like that. Right. And it's misguided. And to be fair to the prosecutors, there are judges that have agreed with that in the nation, right? So it's not that they're coming out of nowhere with that argument. But to me, with my worldview and my values, I was so shocked by that.
And I believe I read somewhere where the law says that the deal of forced blow is an injustice to the system in its entirety. So I'm paraphrasing, but it's on the lines of that.
Is that the one about the prosecutor can drive hard strikes, but they have to be fair ones?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So
that comes up a lot in closing arguments.
you're right. So I like for people that are fighting cases, looking to just have justice served, and to have a system where it allows the system that we're fighting for justice to the win by any cost is preposterous.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, but it's something that type of cognitive bias and those issues that can creep in where values seem to shift. That's something that we as public defenders also have to keep an eye out for ourselves too.
Right.
It's so easy to cast blame everywhere.
Right.
But we also have to recognize we're part of the system, and we need to keep an eye on our own biases.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
whatever that might be. It's a wonderful privilege to be able to be part of. So, and I'm so appreciative to you to have a dialogue. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being willing to contribute to helping us get better at what we do. Right? It's so important. So.
I mean, I appreciate you coming up on, Locked Up and Locked Out, because my whole objective is not for an aha moment versus a solution. How can we come collectively together even when we're not in total agreement on how to get there, but just knowing that there's issues that need to be talked about and brought to the forefront versus swept aside and kept in as a family, so to speak, secret. Is not the way to go. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially in 2025, where we see the carnage that's been done from the 80s and the 90s. Just lock them away. They're misfits. They don't belong in a society, thriving society. That's just not true. I believe. Given the opportunity, people can rise and show the greater side of humanity within themselves. So thank you for the opportunity to do such with the conversation moving forward.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm gonna be calling on you more.
Anytime. Always look.
Yes.
It feels weird to have you asking me so many questions when I would rather sit here and hear from you. But I appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on Locked Up and Locked Out, and I look forward to having you here again